So this is Building 1. It's one of my favorite buildings on the Shine campus because Building 1 it's actually not the first building we built, but Building 1 was more intended to denote the fact that this is where technology comes to be tested for commercial applications. So it's kind of that first step out of the laboratory and into the commercial markets. So really Building 1 is a birthplace for me of technologies that go on to be commercialized. And a few of the products that we've demonstrated here already are our big fusion neutron source. The brightest steady-state fusion neutron source in the world is something we've demonstrated here and we'll spend some time with. Also our pilot plant for medical isotopes, where we convinced ourselves that we could produce lutetium-177 at commercial scale. We'll go into the high bay. So now we're entering the high bay area of Building 1. This area behind me in blue curtains that we just walked past is actually what we call the TDA, or Technology Development Area, where we develop new isotope separation technologies. It was particularly useful for testing some of the core advantage technologies we have for producing lutetium-177. It's one of the best places for us to develop new isotope separation technologies. One of the more prominent features pretty quickly becomes this bunker over here. Inside there is the steady-state fusion neutron source we built. It's the brightest steady-state fusion neutron source in the world, and we validated that through a series of independent tests. And it's got one of the most elegant tritium facilities in the world as well. If you look over here, this is the operator station where people actually run that machine. This is a neat facility for doing experiments with uranium, particularly depleted uranium. So this is depleted uranium lab, and we've done a wide range of testing in here, from testing viscosity and density and how fast fluids will move around facilities like the chrysalis, and also the isolation of certain fission products that are important for our Phase 2 business with the chrysalis, but also for where we're going for Phase 3 and waste recycling. So now we're going to be entering the tritium lab, which is immediately before we get to the particle accelerator. One of the things we've learned very skillfully to do here is to manage tritium and process it and keep tritium streams really clean, including the isotopic separation of deuterium and tritium. This is really the centerpiece of our tritium process. So essentially what we're doing here is we have to supply clean tritium to the accelerator to maximize the fusion output of the system. So we're shooting a deuterium particle beam into tritium gas. And as we do that, the deuterium actually dilutes the tritium and lowers the yield. So what we need to do is keep that tritium stream really clean. So we have to very carefully control and recycle that gas. So that's exactly what this system does. All right, so with that, we're going to move on to the accelerator. So this is the world record holding steady-state fusion neutron source. This beats, to our knowledge, any steady-state sources of fusion neutrons, including national labs, including facilities around the world. It's capable of producing about 50 trillion neutrons per second from deuterium-tritium fusion. This is a new transformative capability because of the brightness of the source. Over time, this will actually be used to drive the heart of our medical isotope production engine. So the huge number of fusion neutrons made here, again about 50 trillion per second, is enough to drive transmutation, using neutrons to turn one element into another. And in particular, we're looking at turning low-value elements like uranium that we might buy for a few dollars a gram into really important social elements that have a lot of value. Isotopes like molybdenum-99 that can be used to diagnose heart disease, long-term isotopes like lutetium that can be used to treat cancer. So only nuclear fission reactors can produce neutrons of this intensity before we came along. Now this machine that we build in-house, and we do it right up at our systems and manufacturing group, can replace nuclear reactors for those applications. And it's proof that fusion has come far enough to replace some nuclear reactors. We'll head on out to the low bay area. So now we're entering the so-called low bay area of Building 1. And here's where we have our isotope pilot plant. So one of the core beliefs we have at Shine is actually that we make small investments to de-risk technology. And then as we prove to ourselves that the technology is viable for commercialization, we'll actually implement at scale. And so that's exactly what we did here. We built this pilot plant to convince ourselves that we could produce lutetium-177 of sufficiently high quality that we could send it to our customers for their drug trials. And we actually did that for a while out of this building before moving it to the larger scale facility, Cassiopeia. And you can see a number of hot cells in here. Hot cells are areas where we can put radioactive material and we can act on it with manipulators. As we come around the corner here, you can kind of see the clean room area. This is where people start to gown up, and then they go into a secondary room and put their face masks on and head covers, and make sure that we're not bringing in any contamination from the outside. Obviously, we're working really hard to separate our raw materials out from our product, and that's what we're doing in the hot cells. But it's also really important that we don't bring any contamination, biological or otherwise, into these rooms. So that's why we have these steps. So back over here, we head over to what actually used to be the quality lab. One of the most important things we needed to convince ourselves of was that we could actually meet our customer specification. And at the time when we established Building 1, it was the only GMP-like production facility we had. And so we needed to establish a quality lab where we could test product purity, and that's exactly what's inside this room. Now that we've scaled up and Cassiopeia is operational, our large-scale isotope production facility, the quality lab's moved over there, and this turns out to be a really good R&D area for our chemists. So I'm going to open this up. You can peek in, and you can see a lot of elements of what would traditionally be in a quality lab, things like ICP mass spectrometers and a lot of other quality control devices. But again, primarily used for R&D at this point, given we have a more sophisticated quality lab in Cassiopeia. This is the end of the tour of Building 1.